Good evening, and welcome to the July the 12th regular City Council meeting. We're going to open with prayer and pledge by Councilman Eddie Smotherman.
If you would, please bow and pray with me. Lord, I just come humbly before you tonight, and I just pray that we all remember that we're all made of one blood, and that we encourage each other, we display peaceful actions, love, respect, and that we continue to accept gracefully your grace and your mercy. Lord, we just pray that you keep your protective hands around our firefighters, our police officers, and our staff. I pray that you look over us during this meeting tonight. In Jesus Christ's name I pray these things. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we have two ceremonial items that I'm so excited about. Our Cultural Arts Murfreesboro is so thrilled to announce the selection of our 2018-2019 Artist Laureates, Photographer Laureate Gail Stoner, Poet Laureate Corey Wells, and Painter Laureate Ashley Buchanan. Gail, Corey, and Ashley were selected as this year's artist representatives for the city of Murfreesboro for their continued contribution to fostering diversity and cultural enrichment in the community, and as highly skilled creative practitioners within their fields. And now we'll have Assistant City Manager Jennifer Moody, the honors.
Okay, I will introduce each laureate, and if you'll come up and receive an award in recognition of your year of service, and also take a picture with our Vice Mayor. The first is Poet Laureate Corey Wells. This year's returning Poet Laureate, Corey Wells, is a longtime Murfreesboro resident who many of us know through her work with the League of Women Voters. She is an author of the poetry collection Heaven Was the Moon from March Street Press, and her writing appears in publications nationally and abroad. Corey is the principal founder of Poetry in the Borough, a local monthly event for poetry and spoken word. In her first term as Poet Laureate, Corey's outreach included writing poems with incarcerated women in Murfreesboro's Doors of Hope program. She is known for her energetic poetry performances, her accessible approach as a teaching artist, and her continuing dedication to helping all members of our community experience the many ways that words matter. Thank you, Corey. Next is our Photographer Laureate, Gail Stoner. Photographer Laureate Gail Stoner's foray into fine art photography began in the mid-'60s while he was stationed in Duluth, Minnesota. Through a successful 21-year career in the Air Force and 2 decades as a professional speaker, Gail has continued to hone a masterful and highly professionalized photographic practice with great contribution to the landscape tradition. Gail and his work have been featured in several national publications, including Photoshop User Magazine, Scott Kelby's Insider publication, and Outdoor Photographer magazine. Gail's photographic practice is also deeply informed by his community volunteer work. He is a photography teacher to the fine arts students at Franklin Road Christian School and a documentary photographer for the Veterans Day ceremony. As a photographer and educator, Gail represents a working arts practice that's both technically innovative and community-minded. Thank you very much, Gail. And we have our painter laureate, Ashley Buchanan. This year's painter laureate, Ashley Buchanan, is an artist, a filmmaker, and designer with a vastly interdisciplinary practice, ranging from drawing, animation, and film to wood carving and photography. Her involvement in Murfreesboro's creative community is equally expansive. She's the founder of the production company Creative Movements, is a longtime contributor to several regional youth art camps, and has been awarded by Tennessee Parks and Recreation for her extensive volunteer service to the arts community. As both an artist and dedicated arts advocate, Ashley continues to challenge ideas, provoke thought, and enrich her community through smart and accessible creative practices. Thank you, Ashley.
And now our next ceremonial item is going to be presented by City Manager Craig Tyndall.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. From the arts to sports, I'm going to read a proclamation. Whereas, through its discipline, dedication, and hard work, the Murfreesboro Football Club U15 Girls Storm Team experienced a spectacular 2018 season, proudly representing Murfreesboro, Rutherford County, and Tennessee. And whereas Murfreesboro FC U15 Storm Team under Coach Billy Lewis overwhelmed the competition over the last 3 years, posting over 100 wins. And whereas along the way, Murfreesboro FC U15 Girls Storm Team won the first Division I state championship for Murfreesboro-based team in 2016 and finished as a finalist in 2017. And whereas in 2018, the Murfreesboro FC U15 Girls Storm Team finished in second place in the Southern Regional Premier League, spanning top teams from 3 states. And whereas in 2018, the Murfreesboro FC U15 Girls Storm Team added a second Division I state championship in storybook fashion and finished in the top 4 in Southern Region, the Southern Regional Championship Tournament, spanning top teams from 11 states. And whereas the Murfreesboro FC 15 Girls Storm Team, Billy Lewis, and his assistant coach, Tyler Cunningham, will forever be designated for the storybook success from 2016 to 2018. Now, therefore, I, Shane McFarland, Mayor of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, on behalf of the entire City of Council, do hereby proclaim July 12th, 2018 as a day to recognize the Murfreesboro FC U15 Girls Storm Team and encourage all citizens to join me in recognizing and honoring the significant contributions, visibility, and notoriety the team and its coach have brought to our city.
And after we take the first picture, can proud daddy, Mr. Rick LaLance, come and take a picture with the team too?
I'll leave this here.
Good, I'll never see. I think I am pretty thoughtful.
Yeah. Don't they have ice cream across the street?
Yeah, pretty cool.
They look cute. Those girls are tough.
Looks are deceiving, huh?
Yeah. All dressed up.
That's wonderful.
Okay, we're ready for our consent agenda, and we have one item, D, has been withdrawn. So if we can look over the consent agenda, if there are no questions or comments, if we get a motion and a second.
Move for approval of the consent agenda with the exception of item 1D, which has been removed.
Second?
Ms. Aaron, will you call the roll?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye. Now for the minutes. Attorney Tucker, can we do one motion for all the minutes, or do we have to do them individually?
Accept them all as a single motion.
Thank you.
So moved. Second.
There's been a motion and a second.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye. Now for new business. Ordinance 18-0-40, amend Chapter 29 subdivision maps and plots. Do we have someone that's going to do that?
Mr. Bromley?
And the short straw is,
I guess I'm presenting it.
Wing it.
Yeah, the crux of this, and there's a resolution later on, which is what I thought I was going to be presenting, is with regards to the Planning Commission fees. You'll recall during the budget review process, we brought an increase in fee, a prospective increase in fees to the City Council as a part of the budget review process for the Planning Department. At that time, we told you that the fees had not been raised since 2008 due to Mr. Tucker and his team's crack research. It's actually 2006. So we haven't raised fees in 12 years. Our costs have gone up. The City Council indicated during the budget review process that you wanted us to look at our various revenue sources and determine where some revenue sources might need to be increased. And so we reviewed our submittal fees and identified some what we consider modest increases, but increases that help us keep pace with the cost to our department, both from a manpower standpoint and from a tangible cost such as advertising and things of that nature. And there are some other miscellaneous amendments to this in this ordinance. At any rate, in order for the resolution, which is the item 6, to go into effect, this ordinance must be adopted and it also makes it easier in the future for any time that we want to change our fees, that we can do it by resolution as well. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'll wing whatever I can.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Hearing none, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet? Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye. Ordinance 18-0-42, amend Chapter 4, alcoholic beverages.
Vice Mayor and members of council, I'll be presenting this on behalf of staff. This ordinance will amend Chapter 4 of the Murfreesboro City Code, dealing with containing the city's regulations of alcohol and alcohol sales. The primary purpose of this ordinance before you is to implement certain sections of state statutes that were enacted in the past legislative session. Those are the first two, and I'll address those first. The first one is that it is to implement a new state mandated 1,500-foot distance requirement between an existing retail liquor store and a new retail liquor store. This distance requirement was included in the state law that authorized the sale of wine at the same time that and on the same days that beer is being sold. So wine being sold on Sundays in addition to Monday through Saturday. The distance requirement, like I said, is set by statute, the 1,500 feet. What is not set by statute is how the 1,500 feet are to be measured. Currently, we don't have any distance requirement in the city code with respect to distances between retail liquor stores. The only distance requirements we have are those between a retail liquor store and a school, and a retail liquor store and a church. The purpose of those, the distance requirements that exist in the code right now between the stores and churches and the stores and schools is to address the secondary effects of liquor stores on the community. And when you talk about secondary effects in this context, you're talking primarily about possible increase in crime, loitering in the community, things like that. That's the purpose of those distance requirements. And for that reason, the distance requirement is measured more or less the way the crow flies. It's a straight line radius from point to point from the entrance of the store. The distance requirement between the two retail liquor stores, in staff's opinion, is not to address secondary effects. However, the purpose of that distance requirement is to protect the market share and viability of existing liquor stores. So you want to address it not based on its effect on neighboring properties, but look at it in terms of how it affects commerce in the city. And so the way that staff is recommending that distance be measured would be the way your typical consumer would travel between one retail liquor store and another retail liquor store. And that would basically be from the front door of one establishment to the public right-of-way, along the public right-of-way to the driveway or parking lot of the next retail liquor store to the front of that liquor store. So that explains why staff is recommending that the distance requirement be measured in this way, and why it's different from the way the church and school distance requirements are measured. The second component of the ordinance is to implement basically to allow the retail sale of beer at certain Middle Tennessee State University sporting events. This was the sale of liquor at certain athletic facilities at MTSU was authorized this past legislative session, and it was signed by the governor into law. In reviewing the city's current set of beer permits, there was not a beer permit that applied particularly well to state-owned property. And so what this ordinance does is create a new category of beer permit that is exclusively for the sale of beer on state-owned property, including MTSU. The third aspect of this ordinance before you is to correct what I believe to be an inadvertently overbroad provision of Article 5 of Chapter 4, which deals with the sale of alcohol on properties where there is nudity or sexually explicit entertainment. Based on recent developments in case law, it seems that the language in this provision creates ambiguity as to what type of conduct is permissible and what would be construed as prohibiting a mainstream movie theaters and live performance theaters, such as the Center for the Arts, from selling beer to patrons watching certain movies or theatrical productions. This article was specifically designated to regulate the sale of alcohol at what would be known as an adult-only theater, not at a mainstream movie theater, and not at a community theater like the Center for the Arts. So this staff is recommending this change to avoid that overbreadth. And I'll be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions or comments?
So the sale of beer at state-owned properties is now permitted by state law?
It's not permitted on all state-owned properties. There was a public act passed that allowed the sale of beer at certain MTSU athletic facilities, including the football stadium, the basketball arena, and I think it was the baseball stadium. But in order to implement that and permit the sale of beer, they have to obtain a beer permit from the city. Regardless of whether we enact this ordinance, MTSU or its vendor at those facilities could go and obtain a liquor license to sell liquor or wine at those venues. But they can't sell beer unless they get a beer permit from the city.
Do you know what the intent of MTSU is?
The intent is that we have talked with their vendor who would be who provides services at all three of those venues, and their intent is to apply for a permit and to sell beer at sporting events.
Are they going to sell liquor too?
What was that?
Are they going to sell liquor too?
I don't know their plans in that regard.
Seems like it'd be more likely if they can't sell beer that they would sell wine or liquor. Probably it seems reasonable.
Generally, in large sporting venues, if you're going to sell mixed drinks or wine or anything, it's in a very small venue. It's not generally over the counter in most cases. So beer is mostly the product that's sold at vending booths.
Could I ask a question about the kind of a different part of this, which is the distance measurement.
Sure.
Is there a compelling reason to maybe to potentially remove confusion about measuring it differently for one way? I understand the reasoning for it, but would it make things easier for everyone to just use the same measurement process if we use the right-of-way process on all measurements?
Without getting into too much detail with respect to when it comes to measuring distances for purposes of addressing secondary effects, the interpretation of state law is pretty clear that it should be a straight line measurement.
Okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments?
Let me ask a question. And so with the four of us here, it's going to take all four of us for this to pass or not?
No, it will take the majority of those present.
Okay.
I will comment on this. I think we'd be a bit naive if we thought there was no alcohol being consumed at MTSU football games right now. The reality of it is they've been consuming alcohol out there as long as I've been going to football games out there. This may bring it more out into the open than it has been in the past, but certainly many of the fraternities and stuff have had parties and stuff in the Grove and other areas around the campus where alcohol has flowed quite freely. It just hasn't been legal, and I think this is a process of trying to legalize it. I understand what they're trying to accomplish, but I generally are not one to even make the motion to approve a beer permit, so I'm hesitant to say anything on this, but I don't know that it will improve the game any to do this, but I understand if you go to Rupp Arena or any other major college arena right now, you're going to see exactly what they're asking for. So I don't think they're asking for anything that's not norm in today's society. So unless anybody else has got a comment, I'll move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
No.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye. Resolutions. Resolution 18-R-20 to amend the 2018-2019 Murfreesboro City Schools budget. Dr. Gilbert.
Good evening. I'm not Gary Anderson. He's on vacation, so I'm talking money tonight. Basically, what we're asking is for you to approve the budget that the school board has approved as a result of our coming before council. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer them.
Do we have any questions or comments on the amendment to the 2018-2019 Murfreesboro City School budget?
No questions. I move for approval.
I think I'm going to second this, but Dr. Gilbert, what is the total physical impact of this?
We're looking at $180,000 coming out of our fund balance, but we will still be within the 3%. When you look at this, Mr. Smotherman, the increase that we're expecting from state funds really has to do with, if you recall, the governor's safety funds. So what we will be doing is shifting some of the, like the trainings and some of the things that would fall underneath that over to those funds, and that way we can purchase our buses, that's what you see with the increase of the $299 for capital outlay.
Right.
We can purchase them, so that's the way that's working, but we'll still be legal.
Okay, fantastic. Makes complete sense. Thank you, Dr. Gilbert.
All right,
I'll
thank
second the
you.
motion.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris?
Aye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Resolution 18-R-21, authorize increase in application, review, and permit fees assessed by the Planning Department and Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Bromley.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Scales Harris. This one I'm actually prepared for.
Okay.
The ordinance allowed for this resolution to come through. This resolution actually has the specific amounts that we're proposing to increase the fees to. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
These are all similar to what we discussed in the budget process?
These are the exact same numbers. I think we added a fee for the review of a grading plan, but other than that, they're basically identical.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Thank y'all.
Thank you. Resolution 18-R-22, naming certain property donated to the city of Murfreesboro as Mark Pirtle Blue Way Park.
Good evening.
Good evening.
On October 25th, 2017, City Council supported the acceptance of the donation of the property to the city by Mr. Mark Pirtle. The donation is approximately 13 acres at the West Fork of the Stones River at Sterling Farmer Lake, along with approximately 50 feet of shoreline and a conservation easement, along an additional 5 feet to 25 feet wide strip of property that includes an old stone wall. The Greenway Committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission also supported the donation. In addition, while constructing Riverwatch Apartments adjacent to the donated property, Mr. Pirtle is building a trail along the shoreline that allows public access to the water, allowing for recreation-related amenities for fishing and for boating. The Public Parks, Parklands, and Park Facilities naming policy adopted by City Council allows for consideration for naming based on land donation. I want to point out, if I could, just in light of our new format for this communication for the council, priority served in regards to the safe and livable neighborhoods, our Murfreesboro 2035 strategy to work to preserve Murfreesboro's natural resources, conserve energy, and protect and advance the environment by continuing to provide for preservation and conservation of open space, including wetlands, floodplains, streams and water bodies, woodlands, and natural areas. This is very suited to that, a property that I'm personally very excited about, and would like to recommend the resolution before you to name the site Mark Pirtle Blue Way Park.
Are there any?
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Attorney Tucker, can we make one motion on all four of these items, or should we do individual on the engineering?
I think since they are separate contracts, that they should be voted on separately.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. The first one is 2018-2019 city paving contract.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This is our annual paving contract that is typically used to repave city streets. We received 5 bids on June 17th for this contract. The low bid in the amount of $2,716,000 was submitted by Blue Water Industries, which is formerly known as Hoover Incorporated. Hoover successfully completed numerous paving projects under this contract for several years. We would recommend award of this contract to Blue Water Industries. We expect to pave about $2 million this year. Just for the council's information, our main 2 focuses this year will be Medical Center Parkway and much of the downtown area that's been disturbed with the recent Lytle Street construction. With that said, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
What is it negotiated each year? It's a 5-year term on this contract. Is the amount renegotiated each year, or
the amount's fixed,
Okay.
Councilman Shacklet. We just since there was a change, the Hoover had been purchased by Blue Water. We thought we actually had 1 year left in the contract, but we thought it might be best.
Go ahead and start.
There was even some question whether or not Blue Water would even still maintain their paving operation, so we thought best to rebid it.
But the term is 5 years.
It's for 1 year, and then it's renewable every year. I bring it back to the council every year for consideration.
Okay, I move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Yeah.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye. Second item, 2018-2019 city specialty paving contract.
Yes, I apologize. This is a very similar contract. This is for smaller projects, including some parking lots. It does have, or including parking lots, it does have some specialty items that we've lacked in previous years, such as crack sealant, stamped asphalt, hot in-place recycling, that, like I said, has not been available to us in the past. We received 2 bids on this, with the low bid coming from Hawkins Asphalt Paving in the amount of $715,414. We recommend approval of the contract with Hawkins Asphalt Paving. With that, I'll have to answer any questions.
Chris, I'll follow up on what Bill just asked. Is this just a 1-year contract, or is it a renewable option 5-year contract?
It would be a renewable up to 5 years.
I'll move for approval.
Chris, when they do that, is there an opportunity for price adjustment in there? I mean, how do they guarantee a contract for 5 years like that, or is that option? Is there negotiation done in that option?
There's not a negotiation, but it is. It has to be agreeable to both parties. So, for any reason, if one of these companies said,
so either party could opt out. Okay.
And we do also base our cost on the bituminous index, which basically that rises with or falls with the asphalt prices, and it's pretty close to mirroring what's going on with gasoline prices as well.
Right. So the petroleum base is what's driving the price of the asphalt.
Yes, sir.
Is it a situation that where petroleum prices to drop, that of course, we have the option to renew the contract, so I guess we would just not renew it if we were to see a substantial reduction and rebid it if we felt that it would be advantageous to the taxpayer?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I second the motion.
Mrs. Wright?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye. Design contract for Memorial Boulevard, specialization at Kings Ridge and Eleanor Way.
This is the design contract for a previous approved agreement with the developers of the Brookhaven and the Enclave Apartments to signalize the intersections of Kings Ridge Drive and Eleanor Drive, both of those intersections with the Memorial Boulevard. The agreement required the developers to contribute $200,000 for the design and installation of the signals, with oversights of the project provided by the city. SEC has provided us a proposal in the amount of $31,000 with some additional construction phase services not to exceed $5,000. With that, I'll be happy, or I recommend approval of this contract and be happy to answer any questions.
You sure we need a red light right there? Just kidding. I move for approval.
And the developers are contributing a significant amount in this. Is that what I'm?
500,000.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
200,000.
200,000, yes. We expect to be able to do it with that amount to complete the project. If there is any overages, we would pay for it through our State Street Aid account.
Yeah, this is a spot. It was enough to kid about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's ready.
Yeah, once Aldi's gets opened up, and of course with I guess the local restaurant and the strip mall and everything going across the street, you're going to see a significant amount of traffic increase going in and out of that location. So, have we got a motion?
I think I motioned it. I made a motion for it, and thanks for the work.
I'll second it.
The help for fiscal part.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye. design contract for Burnt Knob roadway improvements.
Final item on this marathon is the roadway improvements for Burnt Knob Road from Blackman Road to Veterans Parkway. This is the section of Burnt Knob that will serve the Blackman Park. The roadway improvements are listed on the 2040 Major Thoroughfare Plan. Includes a 5-lane cross section with curb and gutter improvements and it also includes improvements to the intersection of Burnt Knob, Manson Pike, and Blackman Road. This contract is with Huddleston Steel Engineering in the amount of $180,000. Our budget for this in the local bond issue was $250,000. With that, I recommend approval and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
No questions. Move for approval.
Are there any contributions coming from developers on this project as well, or is it standalone here?
It's standalone.
Okay. Let me back up real quick to the last one. If it comes in at under $200,000, do we refund that back to the developer? Okay. I'm getting a nod yes back there from Mr. Huddleston, so okay. You move for approval? Second.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Water Resources, purchase of biosolids thermal drying unit and proposal for installation design of a small-scale biosolid thermal dryer. Mr. Gore.
Vice Mayor Harris, Scales Harris, Council, thank you for the opportunity to come before you tonight. I am going to go through a little bit of a slideshow here. You know, I can't help myself.
Surprise.
Murfreesboro Water Resources is requesting to purchase a small-scale biosolids thermal drying unit. It's because this is a really cool project, and I think y'all should hear about it and the public hear about it. So the full-scale implementation, we want to start the full-scale when Middle Point landfill closes, so this is in anticipation of that closure. Right now we're dumping the biosolids in the landfill. So what we have here on the graph before you is we had 3 proposals submitted on May 22nd. That was Griffin Environmental, Suez Advanced Solutions, and Manco Solutions. These totals may not mean a whole lot to you, but Griffin Environmental is the high point total score, and that was derived from 45% cost, and the other 55% was based on non-economic factors or performance-based factors. You can see here that they are substantially less. Griffin is a $1.41 million cost solution compared to the others, which are more than double that. The total cost for the small-scale drying operation, this is you can see the one-time capital purchase, engineering design, and installation and controls integration and ancillary equipment. Then there's some annual costs for gas, electricity, and operation and maintenance, but the total is around $1.2 million. The 13,000, so 48,000 of that is an annual cost item. This is a kind of a 3D rendering of what the thermal drying unit looks like. We are going to be placing that in our existing biosolids building using one of our rotary presses to feed the biosolids system or the drying system. This is going to be approximately, take about 10% of what we take to the landfill. We're going to dry that into a Class A biosolids, which is a soil amendment that the agricultural community and even the residential communities can use as applying to their grass or their turf or crops. We'll have a dumpster outside that'll be covered that will contain the biosolids, and we haven't figured out yet if we're just going to let people come and pick it up or if we're going to we're really going to be such a small scale production. I don't think we're going to charge anything for it at this time, but it's just to get people aware of the fact that we're going to ultimately go to a full scale implementation in about a 4-year period. That's if this dryer is successful. We do have a buyback option for about 25% of the cost of the dryer if it does not work or if we're dissatisfied with performance. So the recommendation is to purchase the biosolids unit from Griffin Environmental and recommend approval of SSR's task order for the installation design of the small-scale dryer. So I'm available for questions if you have any.
What's the life of one of these units? How long do they operate?
That's a good question. I think we've got this on a 20-year life cycle. That's what we based our life cycle cost was on 20 years.
Wow. How quickly will it be up and running?
6 months,
Wow.
6 to 9 months.
This is something I've really always been interested in, and I was
I wouldn't have said
Wait
that.
till we start manufacturing it. We can take a tour.
I was just curious as to what the moisture content between a wet solid and a dry solid would be.
Now you know.
We actually have a commitment. We have got to deliver from our rotary presses an 85% or 15% dry solids.
Yeah.
And then this unit is going to dry that to less than 5% wet or 95% dry.
Yeah.
So there is there's a little bit of an onus on us to deliver a certain dried product before it goes into the dryer.
For those at home watching, these meetings are extremely educational.
That's right.
Never know.
Well, if you've ever bought a bag of Milorganite at Lowe's, that's what you're buying. And they charge about $20 for about a 5-pound bag.
I'm gonna move for approval before it gets too deep.
I'll second that.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. Police and Fire, amend Employee Handbook Section 5003.5, Public Safety Compensation.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. As you're aware, we passed the Public Safety Pay Plan with a budget, and this is simply a revision to the Employee Handbook or adding a section to the Employee Handbook that addresses the provisions for the Public Safety Compensation Plan and policies related to that, including promotional policies, supplemental pay policies, and et cetera that are in this policy. I can answer any questions for you that you may have related to the policy change.
Any questions or comments?
Any major changes in the last 2 weeks?
No, none at all.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Scales Harris.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Paul. Transportation, Cherry Lane Construction, Zadarac Distillery Access.
Good evening,
Good
Vice
evening.
Mayor and members of the council. Staff, after approval by the City Council at the April 26, 2018 council meeting, requested and was awarded a State Industrial Access Program grant to partially fund the 5-lane road project approximately 5,700 feet in length connecting the Sazerac Distillery to Florence Road. The project will consist of 5 lanes or 5 12-foot lanes with sidewalks, curb and gutter, multi-use path, and a 100-foot right-of-way. TDOT will only cover the cost of the SIE standard of 2 12-foot lanes with 4-foot gravel shoulders. The additional travel lanes and sidewalks, as well as curb and gutter, falls outside of this particular standard. The city and its private partners will be responsible for any construction costs exceeding the SIA standard or the maximum amount of $4,856,200 for construction plus $728,400 for construction engineering inspection. It is anticipated the reimbursement cost will equal approximately 40% of the roadway cost, but that will be excluding the curb and gutter, sidewalks, and multi-use path. I'm available to answer any questions you may have on this.
So this particular project, the grants for 4.8 million, is that right, from the state?
It's actually 5.5.
5.5 million?
It's 4.8 plus the 7.
Plus the 7. Okay, I got you. And I mean, what is that? What is that in relation to what we get from the state or we've gotten from other sources over the last couple of years? I mean,
okay. Well, actually, over the last 2 years, we've received about $16 million in transportation funding through the state on various projects.
And we're still receiving funding from Sazerac as well as.
That's correct.
Other.
All right. Any other questions?
Move for approval.
Second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we're down to our licensing part, and that is a beer permits.
Yes, ma'am. We have 3 tonight. One is a special event permit for the Murfreesboro Young Professionals at 303 West Main Street. It is set for August 4th. The other 2 are new locations. One is at 110 West College Street. They have met all of our requirements. The other is at 536 North Thompson Lane, Suite A. They are pending final building and codes inspections, but have met all of our other requirements. We recommend approval pending the building and codes approvals.
Move for approval.
Can we get a second?
I guess there's a second time in 6 years. I'll second.
Mrs. Tucker?
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Skels Harris?
Aye. We have no board and commission appointments. What about bills?
And we have no statements tonight.
No bills? What about other business? Any announcement?
I just want to say thanks to the Parks and Rec Department for a phenomenal job with the 4th of July out at the Sportscom. I don't know how many thousands of people watched it, but there was a bunch. The streets were full in the surrounding areas, and certainly the park was packed. So another great job by the Parks and Rec Department. Also, want everybody to keep in mind that tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday, Uncle Dave Macon Days will be going on at Cannonsburg, and would certainly enjoy seeing everybody out there. Come on out, and if it gets too hot for you and you can't make it around the place, I'll be driving a cart and I'll give you a ride. So come join us and enjoy the music and festivities.
I have one announcement. Just want to remind everybody that early voting starts tomorrow. So those of make sure you get out and express your opinion about the voting. Lots of fine candidates. The election is on August the 2nd, but early voting runs from the 13th to the 28th of July, so make sure you exercise your right.
Thank you, Mrs. Shacklet and Mr. Smotherman. And we'd also like to, our prayers go out to the family of Councilman Kurt Wade. He lost his father on last week. So our prayers go out to Councilman Wade. Any other comments? Everybody stay cool, drink plenty of water, be blessed, and we adjourn.